So in this talk, we're going to discuss what makes this a truly integrative model. So could you teach us a little bit about what makes this a truly integrative model?
What I think makes this a truly integrative model is the fact that whatever it is that we're suffering about, whether it's psychological, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual or physical, is that all of these issues essentially arise from the same place, which is our energy field. But at the same time, there's a simultaneous reaction in our physical bodies, our conscious minds, our unconscious minds, and our physiological systems like our immune system, our psychoneuroimmune system, our digestive system, our lymphatic system, our cellular expression, and our genetic expression. So let's take depression, for instance. When you're depressed, if you invite someone to feel what they're feeling in their body, when they are actually feeling their depression, they'll say something like, I feel a heaviness in my shoulders or a pit in my stomach. There's always going to be a simultaneous physical expression of the psychological condition because all of these layers of our being are interconnected. So, in order to truly impact change, we need to account for all of these layers of our being that are connected to the psychological condition. So, if we just take it from a perspective of the biochemical model, for instance, our anxiety or our depression is just a result of, you know, irregularities and dysfunction in our serotonin and GABA systems, in our dopamine systems, and norepinephrine systems, for instance. However, that's not accounting for what's going on other levels of our being. Because in order to be truly integrative, you have to account for everything that's impacting those neurochemicals and neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters and neurochemicals essentially are underlied by our energy field, and they're also influenced by our other bodily systems like our psychoneuroimmune system, our genetic expression. So you have to integrate the energy field and these deeper levels of our physiological systems as a way of treating these issues. And life-centered therapy does so because the field underlies all of these issues. And by working with the field and impacting our physiology, it creates the top-down, bottom-up, and reciprocal effect that we talked about.
All right, so what I'm hearing here is that in terms of what you're saying, if someone's depressed and you say, what do you feel in the body? And they say, oh, my chest is heavy. Really, that heavy chest is the exact equivalent of the depression. And if they came in with something physiological like headaches, the headaches actually have not just physiological aspects to it, but narrative aspects, spiritual aspects, physical aspects, unconscious aspects, spirit, deeper wisdom aspects, everything. So that every sensation is, in a sense, someone who's here, a living being who's here, who's experiencing something. And every time you can't handle something, there'll be an exact similar sensation that is carrying all of those levels like it is a living being unto itself. So that when you say, I'm depressed, and you say like, oh my God, I'm feeling heaviness in chest is a living being that has its own function, its own functionality that is physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, energetic, everything. It is a living being. And so that by bringing our attention there, in a sense, we are bringing our attention to all of those different levels. And that living being will then express itself however it chooses to, whether it does it kinesthetically by you reliving what that being is experiencing, or visually, so an image will come to you, or auditorially, so ideas will come into your head. But all of those things will touch every separate level that there is, because it is every separate level. Have I understood what you're saying?
You have. And that's why I think this is truly integrative opposed to other models. Because let's take talk therapy, for instance. When you do talk therapy, you are working on the conscious level, but there are times where conscious exploration can result in the transmission of unconscious psychological material, which itself does change your physiology and the way you are in the world. But it's very different because you're essentially working on one level and touching the second level, but there are so many different levels to our being. And you have to not just work with the conscious and the unconscious, you have to work with the conscious, the unconscious, the body, the energy fields, the energy systems, and the energy flows in our body. And essentially, the way you're describing it is a way that integrates all of those into one comprehensive healing modality.
All right, so would you like to give an example? You were starting with depression, and I know you're interested in physiological examples also. Can you show us exactly what you're talking about here by giving us some kind of case situation?
So a good example I could give would be about someone I'm working with who has anxiety and it keeps coming back over and over again. And she's on a lot of pharmaceutical drugs and she's not experiencing much relief with them. But essentially, in this example, what we would say would be based off her experiences and the relief of anxiety that she gets in each of her sessions, we would say that the traumatic imprints that we work on are essentially fundamental to what's going on in her brain chemistry and what's going on for her psychologically. And by working with these fundamental traumatic imprints on our deeper levels of being, we're essentially affecting healing on the levels that are most fundamental to her symptoms. So let's say she's experiencing issues with GABA regulation in her brain, which is one of the fundamental neurotransmitters of anxiety. We would say that, if you approach it from the biochemical level and you're just giving her pharmaceuticals that are aimed at regulating the system, sure, you're impacting it from the biochemistry, but there's so much more going on in her unconscious mind and body levels where there's stored trauma that she hasn't mastered and integrated that she's essentially either A, unconsciously reliving out and it's playing out in her physiological systems as dysregulation in GABA, or B, essentially it's some kind of a subconscious protection from something terrible that happened. And her anxiety is serving her in the sense that it's protecting her from some kind of an experience occurring again that was profoundly horrific for her.
I understand what you're saying. I would say, just to prove your point, like I had a woman who came in and she had terrible arthritis in a finger. Now, I'm not going to say we could always get rid of arthritis, but it turned out that she found a story where her finger was cut off in another lifetime in a very horrific way. And when we transformed that, her arthritis went away. Now, I'm not saying we can cure arthritis, but it was stunning for her. And I've seen all kinds of things that people would have said arthritis, or I've seen it with concussions, I've seen it with Crohn's disease, I've seen all these things that people would say they're pure physiological things. And when we take care of the underlying crystallizing events and the narratives that are in those events, everything transforms. And then either the suffering goes away or the discomfort goes away. Or the pain goes away, or the Crohn's symptoms go away, or everything just goes away. And that's what I've seen over and over and over again. So my experience and yours seems to line up a lot.
I agree. And with this GABA example, for instance, that's not to say that GABA is the only underlying, neurotransmitter dysregulation and anxiety. That's just a simple way of explaining it to people because what's going on is that in her system, probably, we could assume that from a psychoneuroimmune perspective, there's issues going on with cytokines and inflammation and all these different things. But if there's no physiological root cause of it, and there's no, doctors can't find this organic root cause of it, essentially, whatever's going on inflammation wise, whatever's going on with her cytokines, whatever's going on with her dopamine, norepinephrine, whatever it is, if there's no essential physiological issue with it, we would say that it's some kind of unconscious reliving out or protection from some kind of a trauma.
Well, I'd only go further to say that even if you think there's a physiological issue that's with it, like we've had people who've had accidents, or we have people who says, I know exactly why I have my pain. It turns out that the thing that they think it is isn't it at all. Even those things are a reliving of some earlier crystallizing event that they assume was the reason, the cause of their problem, but it really wasn't the cause of their problem. It was just something that they were bringing to themselves unconsciously in order to try to master whatever the original crystallizing event was. Mm-hmm. So even those things where people are sure they know why they have some kind of physiological problem, invariably it seems like they may not know what they think they know.
And that's exactly why I think this is an integrative framework, because it's the power of tapping into the body that allows these people to access the part of them that knows, that that's what's really going on for them and transform it in a way that you wouldn't see in talk therapy, acupuncture, pharmaceutical interventions, energy work, or all these different kinds of things, because you need to have the awareness of what's going on in order to truly heal it.
Well, in order to truly heal it, you'd have to know where something crystallized, where it originated, and if people don't open to all the possibilities, which is, I think, the next thing maybe we'll talk about, how would they ever be able to work in the most powerful, simple way? And I think maybe that's where we can turn next.